Hello everyone, Moon here, and welcome back to another one of my little chatty videos on Hypixel. I'm in the Hypixel housing doing some parkour. This parkour was created by Ristico? Yeah, whatever that name is, I don't know how to pronounce it, but yeah. So I'm going to be doing a parkour course created by him. And I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get started with this. For this video, I want to talk about an experience I had that I think others would find interesting, simply as it doesn't happen to many people. And that's the fact that I started university at the age of 16. Now, in some countries, I get that starting university at 16 isn't that big of a deal, and is even considered normal. But for someone who lives in America, it is a big deal, as most people here start college at age 18 or 19. In order for this story to make sense why I started college at 16, I'm going to have to provide some background. So I was always the type of person who liked teaching myself things over being taught things from others, and one of the results of this was that by age 6, I had taught myself how to read and was reading first grade level books. My mother had decided that because I already knew the basics, she didn't want to put me in kindergarten where I would be just taught a bunch of the things I had already taught myself, so she instead decided to homeschool me. For this reason, I was homeschooled my entire life. I have never been to public school. And because I was homeschooled, I was able to complete kindergarten, first and second grade all in 1 year. I was also able to work through other grades a lot faster than if I'd been in school, as well as do schoolwork through the summer, which was something I would often do as I tended to get really down and even somewhat depressed when I didn't have something to do. Because of all this, I was set to graduate at the age of 16. And that was until my family moved to Pennsylvania. So one of the things about Pennsylvania is that if you want to graduate at any age under 17, you had to fill out a lot of paperwork and do a lot of extra things that I would not have been able to qualify for some reason. So it meant that despite having all my stuff done and have all my curriculum and stuff that I needed to graduate high school, I was not going to be allowed to graduate at 16. And instead would have to wait until I was 17. Personally, I was actually really glad of this, as it meant I got to do another year of robotics and get to graduate with my older brother and some friends that I had who threw robotics, so I would get to graduate with them instead of graduating a year ahead of them. It also meant that I could do another year of work in order to save money for college. But the only problem I really had was that I didn't actually have any schoolwork to do, as I completed all the requirements to graduate. So my mother decided that the best thing for me to do was to do dual enrollment at the local state university. Now, dual enrollment is simply when a senior in high school takes college classes on campus just to get a head start in the college credits they'll need to get their degree. So that's how I found myself taking college classes at the age of 16, having never been in any type of class setting ever before. I took a total of 3 classes my senior year, 2 in the first semester and 1 in the second one, and for the rest of this video I'm just going to tell you a story or theme around each of these classes. So the first class I had was Biology 101. It was a class about 70 students or so, which was nerve-wracking itself, but the worst part about it was that I didn't care for my professor that much. As it was election year, she talked a lot about politics for a class that was about biology and actively forced her political opinions on her students, which I thought was very wrong and unprofessional thing to do. But the worst part of the class was definitely the first exam. This would be the first exam I would ever take in college, the first one not graded by my parents, and I felt I had a lot to prove. I wanted to prove myself that I was actually smart, and it wasn't just because I was homeschooled, and being homeschooled is easier than public school, which isn't true at all, but a lot of people think it is, and that meant I had something to prove to these people. I had to prove them wrong, and I figured the only way I could really do that was by doing well in this class. So exam day comes, and I've studied really hard for it, but I'm still nervous, and well, I just start the class I start the quiz, I'm ready to go, and I'm just shocked by how unbelievably hard this exam is. Half of the stuff on the exam the professor had never talked about. And I had read all the books. Most people I know don't in college classes, but I do. I've read all the books, so I knew it wasn't in those. I had never missed a class. I'd been getting A's in all the homework. I even made a friend in the class who we studied and compared notes with. I'd done it all, but still I left that class after the exam feeling like I had failed. And sure enough, the grade was posted online, and I had gotten a 60. And honestly, I was crushed and terrified that all those things people had said about homeschoolers was true, and that because I was homeschooled, I was destined to fail in getting a higher education. But I was determined not to let those thoughts stop me, and I went back to class determined to pay closer attention and study harder. I still felt dejected, but I was determined to learn from my mistakes and do better because of them. Turns out it wasn't my mistake, but the professor's. It also turned out that no one in the class had done well. In fact, I believe the highest grade that a classmate got on that exam was a 70. The professor had to give a whole speech of how disappointed she was in everyone for doing so badly. Though I must say, if the entire class failed so hard, you shouldn't be blaming the students, because clearly at that point, it's the professor who failed, not the students. Anyways, after the whole speech, she gave every student a bonus 30 points, meaning my actual first exam grade was not a 60, but a 90, which did make me feel a lot better. My exams did get better after that, with the second exam only needing a 10-point boost instead of a 30. As I got a 90 in that exam, I managed to get 100 in it, and I ended up acing the class. So I guess kind of like the whole moral is I guess the whole takeaway about that is just because you're homeschooled, you shouldn't have to feel worried about going to college and stuff like that. Like, you've got this. We just because you're homeschooled doesn't mean you're going to fail in the future. In fact, you've got the same experiences, you've learned the same things, sometimes even more of the same things. There's a lot of pros and cons versus homeschooled and public schools and stuff, and I get that, but one shouldn't have the advantage over the other, and that was something I definitely learned in this class, was that I just gained a lot of confidence realizing that, yeah, I can do college, I can do university, and I can even enjoy it. So the second class I had that semester was Spanish 101, as I knew I would be going into English for college. One of the requirements that a lot of universities had was that you would have 3 semesters of a foreign language. So I felt that it was best to get 2 of those classes out even before I started college. So I took Spanish 01 my first semester and 102 the second. Spanish 101 was the class where I realized how much I stood out in the class by being the youngest. It didn't help that despite being 16, I looked 13, I looked like I should be in middle school, and that I did not belong in this college setting. Also, in Spanish, one of the first things you learned was introduction, so you learned things like your age, what year in college you were, or in my case, the fact that I was a senior in high school, and stuff like that. And also, what school you went to beforehand, so I also had to share that I was homeschooled, which turns out I think I was the only homeschooler in that class. It was a smaller class, there was only 12 students, but still I was the only homeschooler. I was the youngest by far, being at 16, and I was obviously the only one still in high school. So I was suddenly set apart, and simply because I had to do my introductions out loud, and I felt really separated and just really anxious because of that. My professor, though, was actually really excited to have me in my class. He said that I was kind of the youngest student he had ever taught, and despite that being 4 years ago, he still stopped me in the hallways and stuff to talk with him about different things. Kind of disappointed that I did not continue Spanish, but I don't have a gift in foreign language, so, not much we can do about that. Which you could probably tell by my last comment, it did mean that despite looking at other universities, I did end up going to the university that I dual enrolled for college to get my degree. So yeah, the class was actually really fun. we had, instead of the final exam, if you got higher than a 90 in the class, you had a party. The only requirement of the party was that you had to speak Spanish most of the time. And me being an introvert, I never talked to people, so I kind of just sat in my little corner and ate food and didn't have to talk much. So yeah, that was pretty cool. The only problem with the class I found was that I didn't learn much at all, like, which meant that I had a really bad foundation for Spanish 102 and 103. I did manage to get a B in both those classes, but I had to work like extra hard to get those Bs because I didn't really learn anything in Spanish 101. So Spanish 2 is the class where I actually experienced one of my more embarrassing college moments. It was cold out as it was January, so I was wearing a sweater, and I'll be honest, I knew this was an ugly sweater. I wore it because it was ugly. So the sweater I was wearing, it kind of looked like a Christmas tree, but eating up all the tinsel you would put on it, and then threw it up in the form of a sweater. It was shiny, a bit itchy, and a really horrendous shade of purple with all the colors of the rainbow weaved into it. But I still loved it and therefore wore it. Well, at least I wore it until this day at class. So we were working on learning how to describe things in Spanish, and my professor, she was going around the room pointing at things and getting students to describe those items. I don't know why she decided to do this, but she decided it would be a great idea that one of the items she would pick would be the sweater I was wearing. So she made me stand up in the middle of the class, and she had all the students try to describe my sweater in Spanish. It was a long 5 minutes because I could tell people were struggling. No one wanted to be mean, but it was quite obvious that everyone thought my sweater was ugly, but didn't want to insult me, especially not in a foreign language. They were all extremely uncomfortable, which made me very uncomfortable. I'm just standing in the middle of the classroom, hoping that no one's actually going to outright insult me, but kind of wishing someone would, just to break the tension. It wasn't great. And then somehow an argument started about like what colors were actually in my sweater. Like, one girl swore that there was green, but everyone else was like, no, there's no green, and there wasn't any green. They were right. And people were just trying to name. It kind of turned into people trying to name as many colors as they could in Spanish, and claiming they were all in my sweater, despite the fact that most of them weren't. Which I wasn't gonna correct them. I just wanted to sit back down and dissolve into my invisible bubble again. But yeah, needless to say, I never wore that sweater to class again. I mean, I still have it though. I'm kind of just hoping I'll get invited to like an ugly Christmas sweater party and I can wear it there. But yeah, those are my. Well, guys, we made it to level 51, but I think that's as far as we're gonna get into this parkour course for today, at least. I hope you guys enjoyed me just chatting about my first year, well, my first experience at university. And I also hope you guys have a beautiful and blessed day, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye!